Hey, social media family. I'm Ramona Phillips, the Healthy Mind Strategist. Welcome to Conquering Codependency, because we want to conquer those dysfunctional mindsets from our past, or those self-defeating mindsets from our past, or those ways of coping mindsets from our past. We've all been through trauma, some deeply distressing, disturbing experiences, but God is a very present help in times of trouble. If you're honest with yourself, you can honestly admit, and I know that I can, that God has been there for us, with us in every situation and every circumstance. It has not always been comfortable, but I love to remind myself that God is a very present help in the time of trouble. One of my family members is having some health issues. It's been going on now for about 4 years. It's kind of got worse over the years, but God is faithful. She discovered a way of being treated, right? And she needs all the money. So God is faithful, right? God is faithful. So we want to remind ourselves that God promises to never leave us nor forsake us. But then we have some surrendering to do as well. God wants us to surrender that fear, the surrender that guilt, shame, and condemnation. God wants us to surrender more of ourselves to Him, because He loves us and because we can trust Him. He wants us to surrender to the lessons in every situation, which gives us the opportunity to become more resilient, right? We gain more patience. We get the opportunity to practice our faith, okay? So surrender, master the lessons of your present circumstances. God says, master the lessons of your present circumstances. This is how we grow, also more mature in our spirit and emotionally as well. We do not move forward by resisting what is undesirable in our life today. I remember a friend of mine, she's been through a lot of, trauma. Her mother passed away. Her husband died some years ago in a motorcycle accident. But we would have different, and I think her father passed away too, But the bottom line is, from time to time, we would have dinner and we would talk about certain things. But I noticed that certain topics would come up, she would shut down, or I can feel like a little wall go up. So not that long ago, we had dinner, and she told me, she said, Mona, God told me to stop looking away, and she would demonstrate that God said stop looking away. God said stop looking away. And I'm hearing denial, right? Because sometimes we can even use denial as a way of coping, but it's hard to grow, it's hard to heal, it's hard to get the lessons if we're using denial, like if we're overusing that way of coping, which is denial, right? Of course, denial is fine in the very beginning stages. When something first happens, we have to process. We have to calm ourselves down and process. We have to acknowledge how we feel and begin to process what just happened, right? But we still have to surrender and trust God. So we do not want to be in denial. We don't want to look away. We want to be aware of when we're not facing things that we need to face, so we really can move forward. We move forward, we grow, we change by acceptance. And that's another thing that helps us to get to a place of acceptance. So avoidance, right, is another way that we use to cope sometimes. I remember years ago, and, I remember my lawyer saying, Ramona, don't put your head in the sand. And I'm like, okay, he actually is seeing this, right? He said, don't put your head in the sand. So he can tell that whatever was going on in that moment, that I just didn't want to deal with it, right? Emotionally, I was just exhausted and just didn't want to deal with it. So God doesn't want us to put our heads in the sand, okay? Avoidance is not the key. Surrender actually opens the door. So listen to this truth. We are each in our present circumstances for a reason. We are each in our present circumstances for a reason, and there is a lesson, a valuable lesson that must be learned before we can move forward. So it's important that we ask God when we're going through something, especially when it's uncomfortable. Well, God, what's the lesson in this situation? What is it that I need to learn, right? Sometimes it's particular skills. Sometimes it's just an opportunity to walk by faith. So something important is being worked out in us and in those around us. We may not be able to identify it today, right? But we can know that it is important. We can know it is good because all things work together for the good for them who love God, for those who are called according to his purpose. So God is with us. Overcome not by force. Overcome by surrender. Overcome not by force. Overcome by surrender. The battle is fought and won inside of ourselves as we choose to walk by faith, as we choose to accept truth, as we choose to surrender so that we can get to that place of acceptance. Okay, God, so you were with me all the while, right? There was something that I needed to learn in this situation. So we can know it is good because God is with us. Overcome not by force, overcome by surrender. A lot of us are terrified of surrendering, have a hard time letting go of that fear and that need to control. But then we're having a hard time growing in when we do that. In other words, it's hard to grow. It's hard to heal, right? We have to let go and let God, right? So the battle is fought and won inside of ourselves. We must go through it until we learn. We must go through it until we learn. We must go through it until we learn. God wants us to learn and to grow until we accept, until we become grateful, until we accept, until we become grateful, until we are set free. So, my family member that's going through a health issue, I hated to see her going through that. But then I begin to say, you know what? We're supposed to be walking by faith and not by sight. So this is an opportunity to walk by faith and only speak faith. Walk by faith and only speak faith. And on top of that, begin to be grateful that there's lessons to learn in every situation, and be grateful that God promises to never leave us nor forsake us, and begin to be grateful that God is faithful to his word and his word does not return void. So just stand on his word. So we must go through it until we learn to trust God and be open to the lessons, until we accept that there's some things we just don't have any control over, but God still loves us and is with us, until we become grateful, stop complaining, fussing and cussing and kicking and screaming and blaming and shaming, right? Until we are set free, right? So today I will be open to the lessons of my present circumstances. Let's be open to the lessons of our present circumstances. I do not have to label, know, or understand what I'm learning. I will see clearly in time. And for today, trust and gratitude are very sufficient. For today, trust and gratitude is sufficient, okay? I'm Ramona Phillips, the Healthy Mind Strategist. Thank you for joining me today, tonight, or whenever you watch this video, because we're conquering codependency. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.